survive, they may fall.
In 1969, some artists didn't build careers. They built moments. One record, one flash on the radio, one perfect collision of timing, sound, and soul, and then silence. No legacies built by albums, no comeback tours, just a single song that somehow survived longer than the people who made it famous. We're uncovering 12 songs that only lived once on the charts, but never died in our memories. This isn't just a countdown, it's a resurrection. Let's drop the needle. Number 12, Grazing in the Grass, The Friends of Distinction. Kicking us off is a sunshine-drenched groove that felt like summer bottled inside a horn section. Grazing in the Grass didn't just sound good, it felt good. It felt like warm pavement under bare feet. It felt like lemonade on a humid afternoon. It felt like the kind of freedom that only existed for a few perfect minutes between childhood and adulthood. The Friends of Distinction took Hugh Masekela's instrumental and wrapped it in bright harmonies that felt breezy, playful, and impossible to resist. At the time, this Los Angeles group was barely on the national radar, but radio changed that overnight. The single soared into the top 5 on both pop and R&B charts, instantly becoming the soundtrack of backyard cookouts, city block parties, and long summer drives with the windows down.
The sun beaming down between the leaves.
They would have other minor chart moments, but this was their peak. A smile-inducing, one-hit wonder that still feels like warm air and open sky. Number 11, Polk Salad Annie, Tony Joe White. Next comes a muggy, deep south slice of swamp soul that sounds like it was recorded straight out of the Louisiana heat. Polk Salad Annie told the gritty story of a poor southern girl surviving on tough land and tougher luck.
Rolls out in the woods and the fields, looks something like a turnip green.
Delivered through Tony Joe White's husky drawl and that loose, greasy guitar riff that crawls instead of walks.
Took it to supper, 'cause that's about all they had to eat.
It didn't sound like anything else on the radio. It wasn't polished. It wasn't sweet. It was raw, humid, and steeped in backwoods survival.
Down in Louisiana.
Even Elvis Presley took notice, making it a staple of his Vegas performances and turning it into a theatrical showstopper. But for Tony Joe White as a performer, this was the lone breakout.
The little dog girl that I swear to the world.
A humid, blues-dripping one-hit wonder carved straight out of Louisiana mud. Proof that sometimes the strangest sounds leave the deepest marks.
And pick her mess of poke salad.
Number 10, Tracy, The Cufflinks.
Down with you, something you do, bounces.
Pure bubblegum pop with a subtle R&B wink. Tracy was bright, glossy, and so catchy it practically glued itself to listeners' minds the moment it hit the airwaves.
When you're this way, I get a love.
It was the kind of song you heard once and caught yourself humming for days without meaning to. But here's the twist.
Tracy, you're gonna be happy with me.
The band didn't really exist. It was mostly studio musicians held together by the voice of one man, Ron Dante, who was also secretly the voice behind the Archies' smash hit Sugar Sugar.
With love everywhere, and when you're there.
Despite its manufactured origins, audiences didn't care. The record was joyful, melodic, and raced into the top 10 on nothing but pure charm and momentum. The cufflinks faded just as quickly as they appeared, but Tracy remains a time capsule of late 60s polished pop soul. Plastic turntables, roller rinks, jukeboxes, and teenage crushes frozen in sound. Number 9, Color Him Father, the Winstons.
There's a man in my house, so big and strong.
A heartfelt tribute to stepfathers everywhere. Color Him Father blended gospel-soaked vocals with a tender story that connected deeply with listeners in a way few records had before.
Come home each night, you're tired and
It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was sincere. The song honored the kind of fathers who chose responsibility without biology.
I think I'll call him father.
A powerful message during a time when families and social roles across America were rapidly shifting.
When he says to me, how's my child?
It earned the Winstons a Grammy. But here's the wild part. The B-side, Amen Brother, held the Amen break.
My mother loves him, I can tell.
A 6-second drum loop that would quietly become the backbone of hip-hop, electronic music, breakbeats, and entire movements that didn't even exist yet. The Winstons themselves never saw another hit, but their legacy didn't fade. It multiplied across decades and genres. A band that vanished, whose rhythm never did.
Color him love. I'm gonna
Number 8. Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Him Goodbye. Steam. One of the most accidental hits ever made. Originally a studio throwaway, this track wasn't even meant for release. The musicians thought it was too silly, too throwaway, too disposable to matter. But when DJs tested it on the air, the reaction was instant. Crowds didn't just listen to it, they joined it. By the end of 1969, it hit number 1. Stadiums adopted it. High school gyms adopted it. Graduations, rivalries, heartbreaks, farewells. Anyone who needed a send-off anthem adopted it. Steam never repeated the magic, but the chant lives forever, echoing in arenas long after the band itself disappeared. Number 7. Baby, I Love You. Joe Tex.
Any legs, you know that ain't no way to do.
Joe Tex was no stranger to R&B success earlier in the decade. At one point, he was even seen as a rival to James Brown in the battle for soul's greatest showman.
You didn't act like that when you had it home behind closed doors.
But by 1969, the charts weren't as kind. Baby, I Love You briefly changed that. Blending Southern grit, gospel-rooted pleading, and Tex's signature spoken soul delivery. The record brought him back into the spotlight one last time. It was romantic without being soft, emotional without being fragile. It didn't spark a full revival, but it reminded everyone why Joe Tex once stood toe-to-toe with the giants. A final brilliant flare before fading from the top 40. Number 6. In the year 2525, Zager and Evans.
Nobody's gonna look at you.
A haunting futurist ballad that came out of nowhere and conquered the world.
Lies, everything you think, do, and say.
In the year 2525, imagined humanity's rise and collapse across thousands of years.
In the year 65.
A chilling message landing right in the middle of a decade already shaken by war, protest, technology, and cultural upheaval.
From the bottom of a long glass tube. Whoa.
The arrangement was sparse. The tone was eerie. The mood felt more like a warning than a hit single. And yet it climbed all the way to number 1 on both the pop and R&B charts.
Guess it's time for the judgment day.
A rare crossover for such a stark, apocalyptic record. Then, silence. Zager and Evans never charted again.
You pick your son, pick your daughter too.
No comeback, no second act. One of the clearest definitions of a one-hit wonder in music history. A prophecy sung once and then gone.
Maybe he'll look around himself and say.
Number 5. Tracy's Theme, The Young Lovers. Not every hit announces itself with a voice. Some drift in quietly. No lyrics, no singer to recognize, just mood and memory. Tracy's theme is one of those records. Born from a television special soundtrack, this lush instrumental was never meant to conquer the charts. It was designed as background, a musical undercurrent meant to support someone else's story. Instead, it became the story. At a time when radio was dominated by vocal performances, this wordless cinematic piece slipped into playlists like a dream you didn't realize you were having until you were already inside it. Listeners didn't hum the lyrics. They felt the atmosphere. It sounded like a slow drive at night, streetlights stretching across the windshield, a moment you couldn't quite explain, but didn't want to end. The group behind the name The Young Lovers was more concept than band, a studio creation that existed just long enough to deliver this single moment of beauty. No tours, no follow-up hits, no second act, just one instrumental record that proved sometimes the deepest emotions travel without words. Number 4. More Today Than Yesterday. Spiral Staircase. If optimism ever had a sound in 1969, this was it.
I'll be spending time with you.
More Today Than Yesterday exploded from radio speakers like a sunrise you couldn't ignore.
I didn't notice.
The horns leapt forward, the rhythm bounced, and the melody carried pure emotional lift, the kind that made you believe, at least for 3 minutes, that everything was going to be all right.
Day comes a new way of loving.
This wasn't protest soul. This wasn't heartbreak soul. This was hope set to brass and harmony.
I'll be spending time with you. Oh.
Spiral Staircase seemed perfectly positioned for a long career. They had major label support. They had an instantly recognizable sound. They had momentum. And yet, this was their peak. Behind the scenes, tensions grew. The business side fractured the creative side. Follow-up singles couldn't recapture the lightning inside this one arrangement, but the song refused to disappear. It became a wedding staple, a graduation anthem, a dedication show favorite. Later, when artists like Diana Ross and Patti Austin covered it, the record took on new life, proof that while the band vanished, the optimism they captured never did. Spiral Staircase left the stage, but their one great feeling stayed behind. Number 3. Going in Circles. The Friends of Distinction. Earlier, they gave us sunshine. Now, they give us the storm. Going in Circles is the emotional opposite of grazing in the grass. Where their first hit floated, this one aches. It doesn't bounce, it drifts. It doesn't smile, it reflects. This record is built on emotional repetition, on the feeling of loving someone, losing yourself in them, and realizing you're trapped in emotional déjà vu. The orchestration swells softly behind the vocals like heavy thoughts you can't shake. It sounded grown. It sounded tired in the most human way.
But I feel that way.
And radio embraced it again. This became their second major chart moment of 1969, their proof that they weren't a fluke. But the industry was shifting fast. The 70s were on the horizon. Funk was getting heavier, soul was getting deeper, and the space for polished vocal groups was shrinking.
My mind
By the early 70s, the Friends of Distinction were gone, but Going in Circles kept traveling. Later covered by artists from Luther Vandross to the Gap Band, it became something rare, a one-hit wonder era song that evolved into a soul standard. Their careers faded, their emotion didn't. Number 2, Smile a Little Smile for Me, The Flying Machine. Some songs don't hit you hard, they hold you. Smile a Little Smile for Me arrived quietly on American radio.
Never come back now, even though he said he would.
Drifting over from the UK with no flash, no drama, no spectacle, just softness, a gentle melody, layered harmonies, a message meant to comfort someone standing in emotional wreckage.
Keep on trying.
This wasn't a song about falling in love. It was about surviving the end of it.
For me, Rosemary.
And in 1969, a year already full of tension and uncertainty, that kind of tenderness mattered. The record climbed into the top 10 almost without fanfare. It didn't dominate, it lingered. It stayed in rooms a little longer than expected. And then, just like that,
Rosemary, you might.
The Flying Machine dissolved. No second chapter, no revival years later, no reunion circuit. Only one soft moment left behind, like a note passed quietly between two people that somehow survived the noise of history. A one-hit wonder that didn't shout, it whispered.
Guess you're lonely now. Love's coming to an end.
Number 1, Oh Happy Day, the Edwin Hawkins Singers. This wasn't supposed to happen. Oh Happy Day was never meant for the charts. It wasn't designed for radio. It wasn't engineered for crossover success. It was church. Recorded almost casually at a local session in Oakland, the Edwin Hawkins Singers were simply documenting their praise. No expectations, no rollout strategy, no dreams of pop stardom. Just voices, just piano, just spirit. But when radio discovered it, something unprecedented happened. A fully gospel record broke through the walls that had long separated sacred from secular. It surged into both the pop and R&B charts, eventually reaching number 4 on the Hot 100. And when it hit the airwaves, it didn't just sound different, it felt different. You could hear the room, you could hear the hands clapping, you could hear the joy arriving in real time. The record didn't ask permission. It lifted without apology. Its influence spread instantly. Artists like Aretha Franklin absorbed its energy. Even George Harrison felt its impact. Gospel music, for one shining moment, stood at the very center of popular culture. The Edwin Hawkins Singers never matched that level of commercial success again. But they didn't have to. Oh Happy Day didn't just become a hit. It became a spiritual landmark, echoing through churches, movies, funerals, weddings, and soul playlists across generations. A one-hit wonder on paper, a lifelong anthem in reality.